Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about the United States presidential election, specifically how the Democratic candidate has had some very troubling and questionable performances and leaks and gaffes, and just in general, Joe Biden is not looking too good. He's not getting around like he should. It's the last week to campaign and to get people to vote for you and to spread your word across the country. And for the most part, Joe Biden's been hiding in his basement. He hasn't been out much. He's done a few events in places like Georgia, a lot of appearances in Pennsylvania, a big battleground state, but I doubt he's going to be able to win that one since he came out against oil and fracking, and that's a pretty big business there. A lot of people aren't going to vote for Biden because of that, because they don't want to lose their jobs and their livelihoods. And in addition, Biden had a pretty bad performance at the last debate, but he was coherent. He just kind of sundown and lost energy at the end. The moderator tried to help him out, but it didn't do much good. And in addition, there's been some new gaffes and some new releases about his health, about his speaking ability, and other stuff that we're going to talk about now. Essentially, Biden has been hiding. He seems like he might be sick, not just your normal getting old stuff either. And in addition, the one quote we're going to get to is where he forgot who he was running against. Pretty crazy, but he was on some interview and he couldn't say Trump. He was like saying who he was running against, and he said George for some reason. Some people suspect he might have been talking about George W. Bush, the previous Republican president from like 12 years ago now. I mean, it was a long time ago, but Biden's basically losing it. His wife's trying to back him up. We'll get to that clip soon, but let's start with this tweet that shows you his campaign stops. It shows you right here, if you look at the image, these are the places that Biden has visited since the convention. Not very impressive, not the most spread out either. Essentially, if you look here, the one state getting the most love is again Pennsylvania. He's got 10 visits there. That's nothing to shake your head at. It's not as many as he could have, but if you just look around, I mean, he's not visiting a lot of states. He's ignoring most of the West Coast besides 2 visits here. He's gone to a few states here and there, also ignoring the greater Midwest. And I don't have a comparison with Trump, but I know he's certainly done a lot more visits. You got to remember, Trump has been doing 2-3 campaign rallies a day. He's making appearances, doing long-winded speeches that are still excellent and interesting and exciting, and he's riling up his base. Trump is really doing it right. Trump has a big audience every time he shows up somewhere, even when he has 2 events a day, even when he speaks for 90 minutes at each event. People are enthralled. They're covering it all over the place. Biden, on the other hand, many less events. He's calling many lids, as they call it, basically saying he's taken the day off. He calls a lid, no more appearances, no more public speaking. He's done that many times, essentially kind of the basement dwelling candidate, not coming out of hiding, afraid he's going to mess things up, because he does quote a lot of things wrong. He does get information wrong. He can't properly form sentences. And that's why, as we'll get to later, we'll talk about how some people think he's actually very sick. He's not just getting old or forgetting stuff like a normal situation. He could very likely have some kind of degenerative disease. So with that said, next let's go to this clip. This is the one where he confuses President Trump. He says, because of who I'm running against, George. He says George twice, and then his wife has to bail him out. So let's check out the video for ourselves, and then we'll talk more.
This is the most consequent, not because I'm running, but because who I'm running against. This is the most consequential election in a long time. And the character of the country, in my view, is literally on the ballot. What kind of country we're going to be.
Okay, before we get to the rest, I just want to point out the translator person. Like, there's a translator lady, and they always have these. I don't know. I mean, I understand why. I don't know. It's something with the Democrats, though. They have them more, and they have really articulate, like really emotional ones that make a lot of faces and do a lot of different emotions, and it just is distracting. And they try to put their like facial expressions into it. And I know sometimes that's a part of sign language. I'm not like an expert on it, but I did get some comments when I brought this up before that some people were saying it's a little bit much. And this usually just happens when these sign language people are doing it on TV, and they're also trying to emotionally manipulate the deaf almost. Like they're trying to make it, oh, Trump is bad, Biden's good, you have to listen to me this way. It's like their way of overhyping and propagandizing the situation.
4 more years of George, he's going to find ourselves in a position where if Trump gets elected, we're going to be in a different world. And so
So you could see Jill saying Trump, trying to get him to say Trump when he said George instead. And it just looks bad, man. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I understand he's getting old. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for the elderly. And he's like a senior citizen. He's dying in front of all of us. But really, Jill, if she wanted to help him, she shouldn't be putting him in front of cameras. She shouldn't have let him run for president. It really seems like Jill is running the show more now, and she's more competent. She's not totally lost all her cognitive abilities. And it just seems like she really wants to be in the White House. Like, I feel like she might have some kind of angle to be president one day too. That's how a lot of Democrat wives act out. Like, Democratic couples, they have wives that want to turn into politicians after supporting their husbands. And that's not necessarily bad on its own. It's not necessarily like, oh, they shouldn't be able to do that. I'm not saying they should not do anything. I'm not saying women can't do anything, but it is a noticeable trend. If you look at the last three big Democratic couples at the top, you have first Hillary and Bill Clinton. Hillary obviously became a politician and tried to run for president. She spun off being married to a politician and made her a politician, even though she had no experience prior. And then next, the Obamas have a similar situation. Michelle Obama is very much the alpha compared to the beta Barack. Michelle makes a lot of political statements. She's like super woke and tries to act like she knows a lot of politics, even though no one ever voted for her. She never won an election that I've heard of. And now it seems like Joe Biden and Jill is like this other kind of power hungry wife too. And I don't know, it's super cringe. And it's the opposite of a lot of Republicans and their wives. Like, for example, Donald Trump has his wife, Melania. Melania is great. There's nothing wrong with her either, but she's not political. She's not super into like getting involved. She just does her own thing. She does the normal first lady duties. She doesn't slack off or anything. I mean, she decorates the White House, goes to events that are formalities and stuff like that, but she's not trying to outshine her husband. She's more of a supportive wife. She's raising their kid. She's doing other stuff behind the scenes. She doesn't need the glory and the camera time and the attention. And that's how the Democrats really are. And that's what you could see in this video, in addition to him not remembering who he's running against. I mean, that's the real story. But I think it's interesting to realize this about Democratic wives. Like, they're not interested in any kind of background role. They have to be the star themselves. And I think I understand, like, there's like this feminist angle on the left. I'm kind of realizing all this as I say it, but it's interesting because it goes along with the differences between the parties. Like, the conservatives are more about a traditional family, husband, wife, kids, dog, house, pickets, fences, stuff like that. Democrats are more about degenerate lifestyles. They don't even care about getting married. If they do get married, it's usually some kind of political arrangement. They're just getting married for show. They know it could give them a little boost in the polls, but sometimes they don't even really respect their marriages. They cheat on each other. Their kids are involved in bad things. They're not raising them right. There's lots of bad signs on the left, and it just surprises me that people would still follow along with that crap and vote for them and do stuff like this guy, like vote for Biden, who can't even remember Trump's name. Next, we have another quote that went wrong. This was on another interview regarding Kamala Harris, his running mate.
270. But my wife, Jill, as you know, and Doug Emhoff, Kamala's wife, are there. Kamala will be back later this week, I think on Friday.
So essentially, this quote is Biden just misspeaking again, saying Kamala's wife instead of husband, talking about his running mate, talking about Doug, her husband, who he calls her wife. And as this comment below says, Missy says, how could his loved ones put him through this? This is elder abuse. I think Missy has a good point here. How could you put your loved one through this? How could they want the office and the Democrats to win so bad? They're not even caring about Biden's health. Biden is sick. He needs to go home and lay down. He can't even handle the campaign. He's not going to be able to handle the country. He's not going to be president for long. If he does win, God forbid, Kamala Harris is going to take over. She is one of the most extreme leftists out there. She's super woke, super far left, communist leftist. She's from California. She put lots of people in jail there for minor offenses. She danced about it afterwards. She bragged about doing some of the same illegal acts that she arrested people for. So we should be really scared if someone like Kamala does end up in charge. Lastly, I want to go to this video from Ali. It says, President connecting seriocognitive symptoms with both motor, physical, and sundowners mental. Joe Biden is sick.com. So here's a little clip of some of the bad stuff. Their hypothesis is he might have Parkinson's. And I think the evidence is already out there, but this video puts a lot of it together in an interesting way.
Biden always needs handlers around. They're always the same familiar, smaller female archetype. These handlers are not only attempting to protect outsiders from his behavioral fits, but also there for physical help, moving around.
So yeah, there is a lot of evidence of that. You always see his little assistant or handler, as they call them, because they're hardly assistants. I mean, they're not someone like a secretary who takes notes for you, prepares your speech or something like that. This is a person literally hired to walk Joe Biden around like he's a puppy dog, really. They have to guide him and show him to places, make sure he doesn't bark too much or bite someone. Sometimes he gets snappy on reporters. Sometimes he forgets something at the podium. We've seen this before. I remember at the debate, there was a handler who had to come back to the podium and get his iPad. He had an iPad on the podium at the last debate. He was also checking his Apple Watch, which has text sending abilities and other stuff on it that could show him things to say, comebacks, give him quotes and zingers and stuff like that, basically cheating the debates. He's cheating at life. He's got these young handlers who are always women, which makes sense because he's a bit of a womanizer. He loves young ladies. He loves to hold them too close and sniff on them and stuff like that. So it's not surprising that this has happened, but it is troubling, especially since this guy could be president in just a few months.
Right this way,
Why attack Sanders?
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
So there were two other kind of physical freakouts. The first one was when he reached his hand out and there was no one there. Then he goes and yells at this reporter. He doesn't like questions. He doesn't like strong, direct questions. He thinks that he doesn't have to answer them. He thinks he doesn't deserve to give the public an answer. So he freaks out. And if he gets even the slightest challenging question, he really gets triggered.
Doctor, listen to the science. The scientists say that... I'm sorry.
So there you have it. There's him kind of losing where he is during speaking. This happened at another recent video speech that I saw just a few days ago where Biden was like walking around behind his wife. Again, Jill is always with him. Jill is kind of his backup, his handler, his main handler. And then they have these little girl handlers that kind of help him when she's not around, when she has to do something else. And it just goes to show Biden's not well. He doesn't deserve to be president. He probably can't even handle being president. And it will likely be people around him puppeting him. That wraps things up. Thanks for watching today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next video.